Have you ever noticed that there's always a gap between you and what you observe? A tiny space, almost imperceptible. Right now, as you're listening to this, you can sense that there's a you who perceives these words and the words themselves being perceived. But who is this you that observes? That's the question the mind doesn't want to ask. Since childhood, we've been taught to name everything. We say, well, this is a tree, this is a chair, this is me. But have you ever truly questioned what this me really is? The mind divides, draws a line between the observer and the observed. But is that division real? Let's try something. Look at any object nearby, maybe a cup, a screen, your own hands. Now, let go of the names. Just look at without mentally saying, this is a hand, this is a screen. Simply perceive. Now ask yourself, without the act of perceiving, would that object even exist for you? Everything you see depends on your ability to observe. But what if there was no observer separate from what is observed? What if this separation was just a trick of the mind? This isn't just about objects. It happens all the time, everywhere. Right now, think of someone close to you, a friend, a coworker, a family member. When you look at them, do you really see them, or do you only see your idea of them? Because here's what happens. The mind never sees things as they are. It sees its own version of reality. You never look at someone without a filter. You see them through memories, expectations, judgments, and that creates a false separation. You believe there is a me here and a them over there, as if they were two entirely separate realities. But what if that separation was just a mental construct? What if, in truth, everything was just one continuous flow of perception? Let's try something else. Close your eyes for a moment. Now think of someone you know well. Try to see them without any judgment, without any preconceptions. Just perceive their presence. Now ask yourself, is there really a barrier between you and them? Or is that barrier only in thought? If the separation between you and the world is an illusion, then what remains? If the separation never truly existed, then the suffering based on that separation was never real either. Because think about what causes most of our pain. The feeling that others can hurt us. The belief that the world is against us. The fear of being alone, isolated, disconnected. But what if loneliness was just a thought? What if disconnection never actually existed? Now, close your eyes once more. Just sit here, no thought, no interpretation. But what remains? Now that we've started to see that the separation between the observer and the observed is just a trick of the mind, let's go even deeper, because there's something that keeps this illusion alive, something that sustains the idea of a separate self, even when we begin to question it. And that something is time. Think about this. If you had no memory of the past, and if you couldn't project anything into the future, where would this self you believe in actually be? Without time, without the stories you tell about yourself, who remains? The mind constructs the self as a character in time. It says, I am this person because I went through these experiences. I am this identity because of my past. I am becoming someone better or worse, depending on what happens to me. But now, look at your direct experience without thinking of the past, without thinking of the future. Where is this self right now? Here's where something interesting happens. When you start to see that this separate identity depends on time, the ego resists. It reacts in different ways. Doubt. Does this even make sense? Maybe this is just a mental trick. Fear. If I truly see this, what will happen to me? control. Okay, I get it, but how can I use this for my life? Notice the pattern. The ego always tries to bring this realization back into its own domain. It wants to turn it into a concept, something it can possess. But this understanding is not something you can have. It can only be seen directly. Let's try something. Close your eyes. For just a moment, forget the past completely. Now, let go of any thought about the future. Without past, without future. Where is this self? Without time, without stories, without memory. What remains? Now pay attention to what happens within you. The mind may try to resist. It might say, this is interesting, but it's not very practical. Or, okay, but how do I use this in daily life? See the trick. It's already trying to turn this realization into a tool, a piece of knowledge, something that can be analyzed and controlled. But this is not a theory. It's not a concept. It's simply what is already here. Now, before thought, if the self depends on time, and if separation between the observer and the observed is just a trick of the mind, then what remains? What remains is what has always been here. The simple, silent presence of now. Nothing to seek, nothing to achieve, no self to protect, no story to maintain, just this moment. Free. Now that we've started to see that the separation between the observer and the observed is just a trick of the mind, and that this separation depends on time to exist, what does this mean for our lives? Because it's not enough to just understand this intellectually. The real question is, what changes when you see this directly? Think about something that has caused you suffering recently. Maybe an argument, a loss, a fear about the future. Now, notice something simple. What makes it painful? Is the feeling that there is a me here, separate from the problem out there. Suffering depends on this separation. If there were no me, separate from the experience, where would the suffering be? Now, look at your direct experience. Suffering always comes from resistance. Something happens, and the mind says, this shouldn't be happening. I don't want this. I need to get rid of this pain. But what if there was no me separate from the pain? What if pain was just another sensation happening like any other? Let's try something. Close your eyes. Think of something that bothers you right now. Now, feel where this emotion appears in the body. Maybe in the chest, the stomach, the throat. Now, just observe without trying to change it, without judging it. Just look at this sensation and ask yourself, is there really a me separate from this feeling? Or is everything just a flow happening with no real center? Now, pay attention to what happens when this separation disappears. The pain might still be there, but it no longer belongs to a me. It's just something arising and fading, like anything else in experience. So, what does it mean to live without this separation? Does it mean we should become passive? That we should accept everything without reacting? Not at all. In fact, the opposite happens. When we see that there is no me separate from life, action becomes effortless because now there's no inner conflict, no resistance to what is. Emotions come and go, but they don't belong to anyone. Decisions happen, but without fear, without struggle, life continues, without resistance. Now, a thought may arise. If there's no me, then who acts? But look at anything in nature. A tree doesn't need to think in order to grow. The wind doesn't need to decide to blow. Your heart doesn't need a me to beat. Life has always happened by itself. But the mind creates the illusion that there's a separate me in control. And this illusion creates fear anxiety, conflict. Now, look at your own experience. When you're deeply absorbed in something, when you're in the flow of a conversation, when you're lost in music, is there a you controlling every move? Or is action just happening? Let's try something. Take any object near you, lift it up, and hold it in your hand. Now, ask yourself, who did that? The mind may say, I did. But look again. The action simply happened. No effort, no separate self making it happen, just movement arising naturally. Now, imagine living this way all the time, without carrying the weight of a separate self, without fighting against life, just flowing with whatever happens, no fear of the future, no burden of the past, no need to control everything, just this moment, pure, simple, without resistance. Now, what remains? The matrix is complex, but each of us holds a part of the solution. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and together we'll see beyond appearances.